Hi, this is Ken Adams, your host for Valley View, and this edition we're going to have David Fox of the City of Salem Planning Commission. So welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Ken.
And the Planning Commission has specific duties that they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about those, what's involved with you being on the Planning Commission.
Well, the Planning Commission is a body put in place by the city, appointed by the City Council, to review developments before they are either approved by the City Council or by the Planning Administration. Generally, if there are special conditions that need to be considered, the Planning Commission needs to review projects to make sure they fit within the standards and guidelines of city building code. And so it is our job to make recommendations to City Council.
So what are some of those codes and regulations that you have to be aware of? What are the ones that you're most likely are going to encounter?
Well, zoning is a big one. You know, I think the Fairview development area, we've recently changed the zoning to increase the allowable uses of a lot of the properties because the nature of business has been changing over recent years to where, you know, heavy industrial is something that is not as common as it used to be. However, there's still a lot of land in Salem that has been reserved for that kind of industrial activity. But business is changing in a way to where you have a lot more cottage industry, smaller industry that doesn't require that kind of zoning. However, you know, it may not be allowable for, I don't know, a state office or maybe a small food manufacturer or something to you know, build within some of these zones. And so this land sits sometimes for, you know, in Salem for a decade because there's just a glut of this specifically zoned kind of property. And so realtors can't find
Suitable
leasers or purchasers. So yeah, so that's an issue that we've dealt with in the recent couple of years where we've actually changed zoning to increase the number of allowable uses.
Well, I can think of an example there on State Street. There used to be an ice cream plant. And so it's not likely that another ice cream plant is going to locate there.
Right.
And I believe there was some discussion about maybe that would be rezoned to allow for something else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know the specifics of that one, but that's a really good point because that neighborhood is primarily residential in that area. And of course the State Street corridor is commercial, but that kind of a plant really isn't a good fit for a neighborhood like that. When it was still in operation, you had semi-trucks, you know, going through the neighborhoods to turn around, and that was sometimes problematic. And also it floods right there in that spot.
Yes, as some of us are aware, I guess it was about 3 years ago, when the picnic benches from Muchas Gracias migrated down to one of the houses.
Right, that's right. Yeah, I remember exactly where that was. Yeah.
Yes. So, so those are the kinds of things that you're looking at. Also, do you have to worry about the environment? I mean, as far as kind of conditions where you might have you're encroaching on maybe native species or something of that nature.
Well, and of course there are other, you know, bodies that are going to be, you know, there are already laws in place for that. So those issues are generally, before the project comes to us, is going to be have already gone through, you know, Public Works and you know, water quality departments. There of course are you know, state laws that have to be abided by for these projects. And so that's not something, you know, we don't have the authority really to make a decision on a water quality type issue.
But would that information come to you during?
Yeah, it might, and you might have neighbors who come and testify about that. So we might, you know, there might be something that for one reason or another there's a loophole that you know, maybe there's an area that is not technically considered a wetland at this point, but we have neighbors that come up and testify, and with information that maybe indicate that it is something that needs to be looked at. So we can request that a condition be put in place that there is a study done on a specific piece of land to make sure that there isn't going to be an environmental issue in the future if a project goes through.
And so what have been some of the big issues? You've been on the commission for about 4 or 5 years?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly when I started. It was 09 or 10.
Okay.
So.
And so what have been the big issues that you've seen come through the commission during that time?
Well, yeah, there are specific projects, and then there are legislative or general issues. So, for example, any neighborhood plan update is going to come through the Planning Commission for approval before it goes to City Council, and like we're involved in the creation of overlay zones, and of course that's city staff who puts together the studies and the designs, and then we'll go through and either approve or deny or approve with conditions some of these things. For example, the North Broadway overlay zone, which is kind of a mixed use area where it is encouraged to intermingle residential development with commercial development and other services. The South Waterfront is another property that we've had a lot of activity with, at least in the last couple of years. And of course, now we finally see with the old Boise Cascade building there is construction underway.
It's starting to shape up down there.
Sure. And Pringle Creek too is another one that was kind of we've had some pretty heated discussions over the Pringle Creek, the Fairview property rather, which is an overlay zone that requires pretty high sustainability standards for construction. So I think those are some that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Now, I've only been to one planning commission. It was very sparsely attended. Is that the norm?
That is the norm. Occasionally there will be a hotly debated issue that will fill the chambers. And I think the third bridge topic is something that will fill the chambers.
And we've had that discussion on this show a few times, with both with city members and various political types that have their own view about that.
Yeah, but I will say it is kind of disappointing that there's not a lot of public involvement, and that point was made recently at a meeting where
that was the one I was at.
Oh, okay. But I remember one where a commissioner turned around and said, "Look, there's no one here." And there have been meetings where the Planning Commission is, we make up the entire attendance in the room. There's no one else except for city employees, city staff and the Planning Commission. And I can understand a lot of these issues don't necessarily affect everybody, but there have been some issues that I wish there was a little bit more public concern, public involvement.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, so that people would get an idea about what's involved, what kind of issues that they need to be aware of, and hopefully we can kind of keep them updated from time to time about some of these issues. So one of the things too that I guess quite often, you're talking about the third bridge and some of these other issues where all of a sudden now you get a lot of people. And so how carefully does the City Council pay attention to your recommendations? Is this something that they automatically do, or do they have other considerations that they're looking at?
They might have other considerations, and I can think of one case recently where the Planning Commission voted, I think 5-1 to allow. I don't know that I can talk. I can't talk about the specific project at this point, but to allow a developer to do something that didn't, in my opinion, did not fit within the guidelines and standards of the City of Salem. And I'm still a little bit confused as to how the rest of the Planning Commission saw it as okay to allow something that the guidelines and standards they absolutely do not allow. But when it got to City Council, they had the opportunity to pull that up, and what they did is they pulled it up and voted to disallow it, to basically reverse our decision and say that no, the developer cannot go against the guidelines and standards set forth by the city of Salem. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but
well,
yeah.
no, I mean it's kind of I mean, as you say, not a lot of people pay attention to this, but I think, that one of the problems we face is that people are dragged in so many different directions, and they sometimes ignore the things that they actually have some control of. And going to the Planning Commission, going to City Council meetings affects you directly.
Yeah, and you're talking about the general public here.
Right.
Yeah, and my feeling is, and I have to admit that prior to serving on the Planning Commission, I don't think I really believed that as an individual I could have as much impact as I could have. But now that I sit on the Planning Commission, and I realized right away that there was a lot of public opinion that we were just a rubber stamp for city staff, which is absolutely not true. And I think that's also true of City Council. They are not a rubber stamp for city staff, but sometimes it appears that way after a lot of thoughtful deliberation. But it's usually because when something comes to City Council or something comes to the Planning Commission, that thing's already been hashed out for several months or years with city staff. So by the time it gets to us, it's already been picked through, and it's usually ready to go. So that doesn't mean that it can't change at that point. However, getting back to the public input part of it, one thing that I have seen happen many, many times, and actually on a fairly regular basis, is during deliberations you might see an issue going a certain direction, but then when you have public comment, it'll start going the other direction. And it's because of when we're sitting down there, we need all the help we can get from the public, and I don't think the public understands that. And of course we're going to make a less informed decision if the only information we have about a specific topic is the paperwork that we were given. And usually we get the paperwork on Thursday for a Tuesday meeting. So the first I learn about an issue that we're going to be discussing is the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. So this Thursday, I got a half-inch thick packet of paper that I have to be
You have to review.
That I have to review
over this weekend.
And so my knowledge is going to be very limited. So when we're sitting in council chambers and people actually get up to the microphone and testify, we learn so much more about the neighborhood that is being affected, about the individuals, not only about the applicant for the specific project, but everybody who's involved, which is the whole neighborhood. And there is a great deal of sympathy for people who are actually living in the areas being affected. So if somebody comes up to testify and bring new knowledge, new evidence that we're not seeing in the packet that we receive in the mail, or even don't even have time to read through thoroughly, it can affect our decision. And if we can't always give everybody what they want, but additional conditions might be added to something that is a compromise to the neighborhood. And often, if we work hard enough, we generally find a good compromise with both the developer and the neighborhood. So I think it is so important for people to get involved. And I know it's difficult because meetings are very long. So if you go to a city council meeting,
they can be
you
very
might be
long.
sitting there for 2 hours before your issue comes up. Planning Commission, I will say, our meetings are generally much shorter. You're generally only going to be there for 30 minutes to an hour maybe, and you will get an opportunity to get up and talk.
Yeah, and so when are these planning commissions? Are they like the first and third Tuesdays of the month, or?
That's correct, and of course after the during the depths of the recession, they were less often because there just was not a lot of construction going on, and so we would maybe have one a month for a while there, but we're back to generally having 2 a month.
And so the agenda for the next meeting, is that also posted then on Thursday? So if the public wanted to see what was coming up Tuesday?
No, the agenda is usually a bit earlier. Often there are agenda items that are added like the day of. We'll find out about it. We'll get on Thursday we'll get a package with an agenda, and then we might get an email on Monday or Tuesday with additional agenda items.
Well, that gives you a really short period of time then to
It
try
does,
to.
yeah. Yeah, and usually those are smaller issues. But,
Oh, okay.
but yeah.
Nothing big comes on your desk.
Generally not. No, no.
So, so the public could go out to the City of Salem website and look under boards and commissions and go to the Planning Commission and look for the agenda probably almost a good week or so before the actual meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and that might be something that people should get into a regular habit of looking at, because there might be something coming up in their neighborhood. And
yeah, just like City Council, I think a lot of folks probably already do that for City Council meetings to see if there's anything that affects them or their neighborhood. I think it's a great idea to, if you do that already, check the Planning Commission agenda too, because by checking the Planning Commission agenda, you get to, if there is something that affects you or your neighborhood, you can actually get in there and have a say before it gets to City Council, and so that you could effectively, cause some kind of positive change to occur between that Planning Commission meeting before it gets to
the City
Council.
Or at least
Right.
get that point of view out, so that maybe, like you were saying, conditions could be added to whatever development.
Conditions, or even that's evidence. So
Right.
if you testify, that testimony, if it's printed, is going to be included in the package for City Council members in their evidence, so they'll get to see your concerns.
And you would have enough time to talk to your neighbors and maybe get some more information, because
Right.
like I might be aware of one particular item, but your neighbors might be aware of other issues if they're going to put something
That's right.
in your neighborhood.
That's right. And as far as neighbors too, I mean, if folks can get together with neighbors and actually come down to chambers with neighbors, as a group, it's very powerful. There's a lot of impact, because that tells us that there's more to this story.
It's not just one person. There's
we're
a
getting
group.
right. There's a little bit more than than what's printed in text in front of us.
And I would imagine, since you have generally low turnout, if a group of neighbors comes down, it'll be noticeable,
Yes.
and so it would have a bigger impact on the
Right.
deliberations at that point.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, I can think of a story of, I think about a year ago, there was an issue that was going to affect an underrepresented neighborhood in Salem, and they probably had, I want to say they had at least 8 to 10 people who came down to council chambers for the Planning Commission meeting to discuss this particular issue that would affect them, and it was powerful, because these folks were underrepresented. They didn't even know their rights, really. They didn't know they had a neighborhood association that they could go to and work with, and the fact that they came down to council chambers really gave us a lot of important information that we wouldn't have had they not come down. And I know that the decision would have gone the other way had they not come down, but the fact that they came down and joined the discussion and testified and shared information and evidence with us that was not in our package from staff, because it was stuff, staff is honest and earnest, but that information was just not collectible, really. So having them come down just adds a layer of truth or transparency to an issue that really helps us in making a decision.
Yeah, and staff has kind of a focus about the development, and like if they're aware of neighborhood issues, that's one thing, but like in a lot of neighborhoods, there might not be as well-known issues going on in the neighborhood that neighbors know about, but maybe the city isn't aware of. And I would imagine that happens, like you say, in these underrepresented areas.
Sure.
And so it does have an impact, and people should be aware of the fact that they can make positive changes, as you were saying.
Right.
Now, when I was at this meeting, they were talking about Jim Lewis, who's on the Planning Commission currently, is going to be going to the City Council.
Yes.
And I believe he will not be at the next Planning Commission meeting because he has some other scheduling conflict. And that would have been his last one. So we're looking for a new member for Jim Lewis. And one of the things that he proposed is adding 2 more members to the Planning Commission to go up to 9 members. So the Planning Commission is actually looking for people in the community to join the Planning Commission. So I was wondering if you had some ideas about what kind of experience or what kind of people would be useful on the Planning Commission.
Yeah. So we have been. So of course, you've touched on the fact that we, you can only have so many of each industry on the Planning Commission, and real estate, for example, we're limited to one person in real estate. And we're trying to kind of define what that means exactly, because if somebody's involved in real estate, does that include a contractor, because that is indirectly connected to real estate, a title insurance company, a mortgage broker, so any beyond
Right.
a realtor, what does that mean exactly? And so what we're trying to find out right now. I think in the last year, okay, so to get back to the basis of your question, we need planning commissioners. Jim Lewis, actually, his term was up last year at this time, in December of last year, and he's been sitting for an additional year just waiting for the city to appoint another planning commissioner.
And he's been on the commission for about 10 years or
About
so?
10 years, I believe. And so, of course, Brian McKinley is new, and he replaced one of the others. So we were out 2 planning commissioners for a while. So we have Brian, and I know there have been about 12 applicants, and apparently the Boards and Commissions Committee, which is made up of 2 city councilors, I believe, Bednarz, Tesler, and the mayor, Anna Peterson. They are the Boards and Commissions appointment committee, as far as I understand. And apparently, of the 12 applicants we have now, they, I guess, didn't feel that they had what we were looking for. So I think that's why we're looking to add, another slot for someone within the real estate industry. So I personally am kind of
divided on it?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I see the value of having people who understand development, and it really has been helpful to have people who have either been in real estate or contracted, and we don't always agree. I don't always agree, with them on various issues, but their knowledge is extremely helpful. And it's good that we don't agree, because we want that kind of diversity. However, it is very difficult to find people, either A, who are qualified for the Planning Commission, or B, are a good fit, who might offer a diverse voice, but maybe don't have the background to be a good qualification. So it makes sense to have, the state of Oregon allows 2 people in real estate to be on a planning commission, and most cities in Oregon have 2 people within the trade of real estate on their planning commissions. However, I agree on your point that Jim Lewis made, that I
Most
think
of those have 9 members instead of 7.
Right, and I think we've had 7 since, I believe, the 60s or mid-70s, and the population of Salem has essentially doubled or more since we began with 7 members. So it makes sense for more even representation to have 9 members. So it would make sense to me to allow 2 commissioners within the real estate profession,
especially if we're going to increase it to 9.
As long as we increased it to 9.
So what are some of those qualifications that are needed to become a planning commissioner?
Well, like I was saying, it is valuable to have people who work in construction, but at the same time, we want it to be balanced. Right now, we have someone who works in transportation professionally.
Oh, okay.
To me, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're planning, I think transportation is one of the things that's often overlooked. Like, we're going to, build up the city and then worry about the traffic problems later. We need to be thinking about traffic problems right up front, and that's going to change the way we plan. It's going to change the way we develop. It's going to change the way we embrace the reality that the population is growing.
And how well we service, because right now we don't have bus transportation on weekends. And
right, and of course the city, has no direct influence
true.
on transit in
But
Salem.
you need to be kind of considering that too.
Absolutely, and that is considered. There are credits given, like in the Broadway overlay, I believe there are, stipulations that if you are building a development and you put in a good quality bus facility, like a covered bus stop, for example, or a covered bike rack or something like that, that you'll actually get credits to reduce your requirement for parking.
Very good.
For example, so yeah, and I know Chariots has been really helpful in helping figure out, how things like that might help.
And Brian
McKinley.
McKinley, he's a school teacher.
Yeah, he's a school teacher now, and I think he did some work for the legislature. I can't speak for him. I'm not sure what his experience has been, but Brian is, he's thoughtful, and his experience, I think, just as a member of the community, as a school teacher, makes sense. I think I'm a business person. I've had a business downtown for 21 years, and Sharon is an attorney, and so right now we have a pretty broad array of experiences, and I think that's really important for the Planning Commission. When I started with the Planning Commission 5 years ago, I think I was the only person that really, you could say, was not connected to the construction industry. However, I own a blueprinting business, and so we do printing for construction jobs, and that was kind of a concern. But obviously, I believe I have been very fair. But right now, we are a very diverse Planning Commission, and I think we represent, a good number of facets of Salem, and I think that we deliberate very fairly. And
maybe some of the diversity could come from some of these underrepresented areas, maybe like the Northeast area, I'm thinking.
Right.
Because I believe that when that city council position was up, there was quite a bit of discussion about how neglected they are.
Right.
So somebody from that area might, that has qualifications, might be a nice addition to.
Yeah, and of course, the Planning Commission is not appointed based on
geographical area.
Right, like City Council is.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good point.
But I mean,
but social justice is so important, and I think that's an element that often is missing from the Planning Commission. We're not often talking about the social justice piece, and I think we've been doing more of that over the last couple of years. But that's very important. That it is our job to represent the entire community, when we're deliberating.
Well, and that's an important piece, I think, because I do know that there are certain segments of our society here that do feel like nobody listens to them. But
right.
I'm glad to point out the fact that if people could come to the Planning Commission meetings, they could have some serious impact on decisions that are being made.
Yes.
And at least then they get heard and that gets considered.
And we need planning commissioners. So
if anybody out there is thinking about
if anybody's interested in serving their community, it's a great way to serve the community, to talk to the boards and commissions committee, and apply and see what might be a good fit for you for volunteering.
Well, David, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your insights on the Planning Commission. And this has been Ken Adams with Valley View, and I hope you come back next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.